What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
Do not approach without a scanner. Audi A5 i8T, Audi A5 even of the first generation can still impress. Not too familiar with the technique of the comrade and provincial young lady. The coupe does not look completely outdated, has 4 rings on the nameplate, and with the right choice of motor and gearbox is also able to drive very fast. However, you have to remember that they were released in 2007 to 2011, so problems are already inevitable. Of course, there was also a restyling in 2011, but if almost all pre-restyling cars on the secondary market to buy for $1 million can be bought, the cost of restyling starts from about $1.4 million. And it is not accidental. Restyling cars have a completely updated line of motors. They differ noticeably for the better both exterior and interior. With our million there is nothing to do there, so we will not talk about these cars. Audi never rusted too quickly, and the A5 is no exception, but since these coupes are not young creatures, corrosion can already be found in some places. To the typical places, hood edge, arches, sills, you can add typical coupe problems. First of all, large rear wings, from which the lacquer and paint can come off in layers. In the second turn it is necessary to check the doors, which often sag and knock locks. All this can be repaired, but it is expensive. And also it is necessary to make sure that glass lifters work. Glasses on these cars often fell inside the frameless doors, and mechanisms were repaired with anything from desperation, so an extra check will not hurt. The interior of pre-restyling A5 is German laconic, but quality of its materials is good. However, because of the same frameless doors and their blistered seals, it actively suffers from dust, which can make it look a little worn. Taking into account the average declared mileage of these cars under 200,000 kilometers, it is not necessary to be surprised. Traditionally for Audi it is necessary to make sure that every button and especially multimedia system MMI works in the salon. Unsuccessful attempts of the owner to make it as perfect as possible can lead to unexpected consequences, which any electrician will be tortured to eliminate. The most difficult thing in case of Audi A5 is to choose a successful combination of engine and gearbox. By and large, it's a good one is a 3-liter diesel engine paired with a classic ZF6 HP28 automatic. Yes, the motor will certainly show all diesel problems in the form of failures of ecological systems and fuel equipment, and automatic transmission. ZF6 HP28 rarely serves without repair more than 200,000 mileage. Most likely, it will be necessary to invest in repair of these units. But it will be predictable enough expenses with clear resource after quality repair, which cannot be promised in case of other variants. The most popular A5 motor on the aftermarket is 1.8-liter CDHB of EA888 series of the second generation. You can carry a couple of canisters of oil with you. You can try to replace the piston group with a later version. You can learn to pray to all gods, but you will never see happiness with this unit. Of course, it is not badly tuned, but that is where its pluses end. Oil buildup, constant leaks, unpredictable resource of timing, fouling and subsequent coking, all this can kill the psyche of even a very balanced person. All the same can be said about 2-liter CDNB, 180 horsepower, of the same series EA888. This option is not the most successful. However, it is less common, because the second most popular engine is 3.2-liter V6 Collar, 265 horsepower. The only advantage of this motor is that it is atmospheric. That is, the expendable in the form of a bypass valve of a turbine, which is necessary to change constantly on motors. EA888 can't make you mad here. But everything else, quite. The timing chain in its time could run out at the mileage of 70,000 and it could serve even 200,000. There is no logic. In this case, the elusal block with scoring had to be lined, weak oil pumps had to be changed preventively. I also had to experiment with various Raskik and repair fuel equipment. In a word, it is an engine for well-off and strong-hearted people. But with our budget we will have to choose one of these variants. Despite the fact that other motors were used on A5, there are cars for $1.5 million on sale. It is even more difficult to choose a successful gearbox. The most logical option is, of course, a manual. It is reliable, and replacement with it more often requires a dual-mass flywheel. The cost of the original strikes in humanity and reaches 350,000 rubles, but a decent sax can be bought for 50,000. And it is really inexpensive, because the repair of robot DL501 or Variator Multitronic VL381 can cost 200 to 300,000 depending on the insolence of the service and used spare parts. Although it should be noted that variators are not bad and in their time were an acceptable choice, considering that there were no alternatives on two-pedal front-wheel drive cars. Now buying a 5 with any automatic transmission requires very thorough diagnostics. Residual life of both variators and robots has long ago approached the zero mark. Of course, the A5 still looks good and drives with fire. But it is simply impossible to find a completely trouble-free version. There were practically none of them even 15 years ago, and now there are none at all. Through putty and suffering, BMW 3 Series 4, E46, 3 BMW in the E46 body is an interesting choice. On the one hand, our budget allows us to look for cars even at the top of the market, but on the other hand, due to the specifics and age of these cars, even among the best offers there are incredible mechanical Frankenstein monsters. Despite the fact that for $1 million you can and should consider the latest restyled versions, their age is still about 20 years. These cars were produced from 2003 to 2006. And since they were once not too expensive and everyone bought them, the process of searching for available parts often coincided with Victor Frankenstein's memories of what he used to make his monster. I collected bones in the crypts, the slaughterhouse, and the anatomical theater supplied me with most of my materials, and I often shuddered with revulsion, but, driven by ever-increasing impatience, I went on to finish the job. That's about the same way most of the 20-year-old triplets on the aftermarket were kept running. Only sometimes they added some details from M versions to feel like a normal guy. The main thing bodywork, to find out how often and how badly a particular vehicle has been hit. The second task is to eliminate obviously criminal cars with broken or unreadable license plates and dubious documents. As for corrosion, there is nothing new here: doors, fenders, hood, sills. By the way, it is not easy to find tin on a coupe, so you should not count on dismantling. Everything has already been bought before you. Secondary, tertiary and so on culling is a normal phenomenon if the car was cared for and was not allowed to rot, but there should not be putty under the paintwork layer. The interior was originally very high quality, but now only memory is left of this quality. It is useless to give any advice here. Steering wheels and dashboards from other versions are a norm, leather worn out for 300,000 kilometers of mileage, too. In general, the task of interior in this age is not to cause disgust. It does not cause an all right, and anything cannot work there. The main thing is that the number of small failures has not passed to a new qualitative level, because restoration of any trifle in the form of fasteners and buttons can unexpectedly hurt your pocket. The choice of motors in the coupe after restyling is small. As a rule, it is either 2.2-litre M54B22, 170 horsepower, or 2.5-litre M54B25, 192 horsepower, or 3-litre M54B30, 231 horsepower. Their main problems have long been recognized: diesel flaps in the intake manifold wedge, Varno's phaser regulators often require repair. It is necessary to carefully monitor the temperature, and with age oil buildup begins, as, however, with any engine. You can choose a car with any of these engines, the main thing is its condition. But 2-litre motors in 42B20, 143 horsepower, are not so good. They are hotter, even more demanding to the efficiency of the cooling system. And age machines usually have problems with it, and much earlier begin to suffer from increased oil consumption. There are no questions to manual transmissions, but everything is expectedly difficult with automatics. Both ZF5HP19 and GM5L40 were not bad units in their time, but we will not even try to estimate their condition on a 20-year-old car now. In any case, it will be a lottery, so you should make your own choice. And it is practically useless to try to look for the 3 of this generation according to the condition of the automatic transmission. It is necessary to choose a live car, and what kind of transmission it will have is a secondary issue. Finding a decent BMW 3 Series of this generation is a noble task. but almost impossible. And its further maintenance and repair are not easy tasks either. However, the fans of Becker can do everything. The main thing is to have a thick purse and nerves. Older is better. Mercedes-Benz CLK2, W209. Everything is clear with BMW. It is a driver's car by its essence, daring and sharp. It is written on its fate to be including in a coupe body. Everything is not so clear with Mercedes, because its philosophy is comfort, and after that, satisfaction of driving ambitions. However, it also knows how to make evil cars for egoists. Of course, our million will not be enough for CLK55 AMG, CLK63 AMG, or even more so for CLK DTM AMG, but they are quite enough for a decent coupe in mass modification. Neither the W203, on the basis of which this coupe is built, nor the W209 coupe itself can boast of resistance to corrosion. There will be rust for sure, and the fender arches can be almost panoramic. They rot very quickly. And everything else also willingly corrodes. Alas, this is a family trait of Mercedes of the beginning of the century. Green technologies in painting and absence of galvanizing have done their black work successfully. It is necessary to check everything, and it is almost impossible to single out something special. These cars rust completely. And even if there is still native paint somewhere and it has not bubbled yet, it does not mean that the metal under it is clean and fresh. Sometimes such a layer of paintwork can be pierced with a finger, because the metal behind it is completely rotted. However, in the southern regions there are still copies in decent condition. True, there are often dozens of questions about the technique, but that is another story. Despite the fact that W203 and W209 are very close relatives, the interior of the coupe looks a bit more interesting. There are no claims to the quality of materials, but the steering wheel is almost guaranteed to be noticeably shabby, and the leather of seats, most likely, will require at least minimal restoration with auto chemicals. And, strange as it may seem, there is often rather poor equipment with primitive music and mechanical adjustment of seats. At the same time, everything is made on conscience, and if the previous owners are not vicious barbarians, the interior can look decent even today. For $1 million we can afford to choose not only pre-restyling cars of 2002 to 2005, but also restyling cars, released before 2009. It seems to be good, but there is a nuance. Restyled copies can hardly be considered more successful from the point of view of technique. Let's start with motors. The best engine before the restyling is the 2.6-litre V6 M112, 170 horsepower. It's probably one of the best units ever made at all. Of course, with age it also starts to eat oil, but this can often be fixed by replacing the oil caps. And if you change the oil on time and keep an eye on the cooling system, even 500,000 mileage isn't a judgment call for this motor. The best automatic 5-speed gearbox 722.6 was also used only before the restyling. However, it does not mean that there are no problems with it. There are, and its repair costs a lot of money, and first of all, repair of torque converter, which is not able to live for a long time. But at caring owners and on condition of frequent oil change, once in 50,000 kilometers, this box could pass before repair and more than 300,000 kilometers. The connection of M112 engine and 722.6 automatic transmission is the best that could be found in W209. After restyling, everything changed. New V6 series M272 with problematic timing was not even close to M112 in reliability. Well, if you are looking for a car with an inline of 4, of which there are many more on sale, then you will probably come across a variant with M271 engine, 1.8 litres, 163 horsepower. Most W209s are sold with this engine, and it is a bit sad. Unreliable timing chain, oil leaks, tendency to fouling are only the most obvious disadvantages. Alas, there were no other 4s on this generation of coupe. The motor, with an output of 184 horsepower, is also M271, and with high mileage, you can't expect anything good from it. Add here much more capricious 7-speed automatic 722.9, and it turns out that after restyling W209 has lost most of its reliability. And it happened 20 years ago. It doesn't matter so much whether the car is 18 or 22 years old, and in the case of the W209, it's better to choose the units rather than the year of manufacture. It's quite likely that an older car will please a little more than a car released a couple years later. But, of course, not for free, because Mercedes, as it is known, does not break down, but sometimes gets sick. And the older it is, the more often it gets another attack of some expensive ailment. No choice, Infiniti G3. The Germans have been honored. Let's move on to the alternatives. For example, Infiniti G of the third generation. To be more precise, the Infiniti G35, because this coupe had no choice of motors, only 3.5 liters, only the best. No matter how diligently Infiniti pretends to be a premium, but its kinship with Nissan cannot be hidden in any way, the Finic rusts. No worse than its younger brothers. Not to say that the situation is absolutely terrible, but still it is desirable to avoid neglected cars. It is difficult to find new body iron for G35 Coupe. In addition to corrosion, you need to examine the body for serviceability of door locks, which in their time failed often, and now they cannot be found by everyone. Especially quickly. But suspiciously fresh headlights should not alarm. They quickly become cloudy, so polishing or even replacement is normal. In general, there are no difficulties, except for corrosion. Everything is like everyone else. But in the passenger compartment, check all electric actuators that can be found there. Over time, they often stop working, and unexpectedly. Both the climate damper motor and seat adjustment drives can fail. The matter is not that they are capricious, but that they are old. The car is at least 18 years old. Anything can break down. But it is difficult to repair a lot of things here. From the point of view of convenience of repair, Infiniti has some problems. Besides, it should be noted that if interior design can be called premium with a stretch, the quality of materials, first of all, plastic, does not stretch to premium. It is not necessary to choose this car by a photo. It is better to come and be convinced with your own eyes that it is exactly the premium you want, because many people do not need such premium even for 500,000. However, there are no companions for taste and color. For some people the interior of this Finic seems really expensive and even prestigious. What is not a problem is the choice of motor. There is only one, 3.5-litre V6 VQ35DE with an output of 284 horsepower. Yes, you should think about the transport tax in advance. It's a very good engine, and its main problem is the unreliable catalytic converters. They are probably gone on an aging car, but the question is when exactly were they removed, when they'd already fallen apart and jacked up the motor, or beforehand? If the latter, it's fine. And if the first, then it is clearly not your choice. Therefore, when buying it is very desirable to check the cylinders with an endoscope. Well, and it is also worth paying attention to the tensioner of the timing chain. If it has gone more than 10 teeth, the chain will soon have to be replaced, and it is expensive. Do not be deceived by the fact that the resource of this chain reaches 300,000 kilometers. The mileage of cars is already large. There can be anything. And the last thing, what you will have to put up with in any case, is the gasoline consumption. This motor cannot be called economical, and if you try to get maximum pleasure from Infiniti every day and at every start, you can be upset by the consumption of 20 liters per 100 kilometers. If you drive more carefully, the consumption, of course, will be lower, but 15 liters per 100 kilometers is the norm. Almost all cars on the secondary market are equipped with a 5-speed automatic Jatco RE5A05A. This is a very reliable box, and more often it fails electrically, sensors or connectors. Of course, over the years its resource becomes only lower, but if you manage to find a well-groomed car with a mileage up to 200,000 kilometers, and there are such cars for sale, small mileages are quite often found on coupes, there are good chances in the near future to repair the box without investing. If you want to avoid even a minimal risk, you can look for a variant with 6-speed automatic transmission, but at the moment of preparation of the material there was only one G35 on sale with a handle. All the same, automatic transmission is more suitable for premium, even ambiguous, than stick-stirrer. Theoretically, G35 is not the most problematic coupe from our selection. But the choice of these cars on the secondary market is not too great, so, probably, you will have to look for a worthy variant for a long time. For the impatient, we can advise you to look for Nissan Skyline V35, it is practically the same car. If you don't have enough for Mercedes, Chrysler Crossfire Mercedes and Audis are nice, but expensive. Can you find something similar but cheaper? You can. For example, Chrysler Crossfire is almost the same Mercedes-Benz SLK Class A170, but in an American suit. It looks like Mercedes, but on the secondary market it costs much cheaper and attracts looks even more actively. Not for nothing young Timati rode on such Chrysler when he had no money for Lamborghini Murcielago LP670 of doubtful turquoise color or Bugatti Veyron. However, the rapper never saved up for the Veyron, he was given this supercar as a present. But it is sinful to envy, so let's return to Chrysler Crossfire. The main problem of the body is the same lack of body elements as in the case with Infiniti, only to an even greater extent. Buying a rotten or broken car cheaply in order to replace the tin and enjoy life is a very bad idea. Even a broken headlight is a reason to bargain hard, because there are no new ones and the cost of second-hand ones reaches up to 100,000 rubles. Besides, for Mercedes someone may not be sorry to spend so much on a piece of plastic, but for Chrysler it is a pity. Moreover, these headlights shine badly in the American way. The interior may be spectacular, many people really like the interior, but the quality of materials is very mediocre. Besides, with age, plastic parts started to squeak, causing hate attacks in the owners of this car. Don't be surprised that many cars have interior laminated even over plastic panels. In the fight against crickets many people went to extreme measures. And what is really good in Crossfire is a decent trunk volume for a coupe. But it is not surprising, because there are only 2 seats here, the rest is used for the trunk. The car is lucky with motors and gearboxes. Do you remember what we said about Mercedes-Benz CLK? I will allow myself to quote myself, the combination of M112 engine and 722.6 automatic transmission is the best that could be found in W209. Now I'll add, the same bundle is the best thing in the Chrysler Crossfire. The only 3.2-litre motor with 215 horsepower is the same M112 in the E32 version. And it is no worse on the Crossfire than it is on the native Mercedes cars. The same can be said about the gearbox 722.6. Yes, its early versions suffered from some childhood diseases, but Crossfire was equipped with the already finalized version. Therefore, we can say directly, Crossfire has collected in itself all the best that Mercedes had at that time. Of course, this best for today has run so many kilometers that there is not so much left from the former reliability, but there are any spare parts for these units. There are them for the chassis and for the electrics. This is, of course, a plus. In everything else, except, maybe, design, there are more minuses. But if to consider Crossfire as an alternative to Germans, then why not? At least it's original. In conclusion, selecting a premium coupe with impressive mileage for 1,000,000 rubles requires a careful balance of style, performance, and practicality. Timati's choice exemplifies the allure of luxury, while the Frankenstein approach highlights the potential of customization to create a unique driving experience. Ultimately, whether you lean towards a well-known brand or opt for a more personalized vehicle, the key is to find a car that resonates with your individual taste and meets your driving needs. Happy car hunting!